Are you dealing with stress? Maybe you're depressed, you're having trouble getting things done, or like getting to that place you want to be, or you imagine yourself being. Maybe there'd be a way to make things easier. That would be nice. Well, today in luck, we're going to talk about how to like gamify your life and psychological flexibility to help you get over these hurdles or these really depressing, struggling times in life. I'm Danny here, buddy. Randy, what's up?
Yo, Danny.
So, have you ever like implemented this stuff, like the psychological flexibility and the gamifying?
Yeah, so actually, I've been reading the book Super Better, which is Kate McGonigal did a TED Talk that was really popular. She wrote a book, which I'm very, very like, it's a ton of really good information in there. And so, yeah, I've been messing around with gamifying my life. There's a whole bunch of like quests in the book to do. So it's a fun
Yeah,
book to
it's
work
neat.
through. Yeah, and I think it's a really interesting concept of gamifying your life because, until I read the book, my life was just a struggle. You know,
Like most
there
people,
was,
I think, right? Yeah.
yeah, yeah, but like now I can see, oh, well, yeah, there are some difficulties, but like, you know, sure there are some bad guys in the game, but there are some power-ups that I can do, and I'm
Yeah.
leveling up and I'm getting better and better, and so it's interesting learning a whole bunch of different strategies to help make life more interesting.
Yeah, it's funny, I've heard her TED Talk. I think I heard her on a different podcast before too. And I know she was like she works in the game industry. Um and she's a very interesting, very like it's a very interesting idea. And it makes sense because I think like if you think back to like when we're little, like we treat things like a game when we're kids. Like things are fun, we're imagining stuff, we're like, and that's how we're like overcoming obstacles, learning skills and stuff. But it's all through like this, like looking at the world very differently than how we do now. And then you get older and it's like, here's my task. I got to trudge to do this. I got to do this thing, not for any reason or not for any goal other than I have to do it. And it's like, it's hard. It gets hard to motivate yourself. Or like, I know too, like, I mean, like when you're really, we both dealt with depression, when you're really depressed, like it can be hard to do anything. And any like edge that you can give yourself can be like just amazing to like get over that and to start dealing with it.
Yeah. It's interesting that you mentioned kids and fun because I was reading that in the book today, where there's a research study that was done that so like first, you know how kids just do stuff because it's fun. Like they play games. Why do you
Yeah.
play that game? Because it's fun. And it's like, well, what's fun? And it turns out that this research study found that when you're rewarded for something monetarily or by like accolades, getting credit for it somehow, it actually decreases the fun inherent in it. And so
Oh,
fun is when you're
yeah.
doing something just for the pleasures of doing it itself. And I found that really, really interesting because in adult life, so
Yeah.
often we're doing stuff for money or for prestige or whatever it may be. And I was looking in my own life. It's like how often do I actually do stuff just for fun, for doing
Yeah.
for its own sake?
It's funny too you mention that because like it does, it's like it's interesting how that like it really does ruin it. Like, I can think back to like I remember being in grad school, like the whole publisher perish thing. And like it just really turned me off from writing. Like I loved researching and I loved writing, but I was like, I don't want to do this because it's like you're just churning it out because you have to, not because like you actually are interested in it, you care about it. It's like it diminishes the value of it greatly. Or like, work like, we're always worried about how much we're making, whether we're getting paid enough. Well, you know what I mean? Like, and so like that all gets in the way of like, do I actually like this thing or enjoy it? And then all the other crap, right? All the bureaucracy and stuff gets in the way. It's like, yeah.
Dude, or all these charlatans selling like follow your passion, like do your passion. And it's like,
Ruin your
especially if
passion.
especially if your passion doesn't pay well, like let's say your passion's underwater basket weaving. I mean, it
Yeah.
may not be that there may not be that many people who are really interested in it. And you're like you almost bastardize your what you did for fun, your pleasure, trying to make a living from it.
Yeah, it's funny too. I've heard I was listening to a thing too on this was a while ago on hobbies, and they were talking about how like most Americans, like especially adults, don't have hobbies, because they view it as like a waste of time because it's something you're not making money at, you're not doing for like accolades or some reason beyond like the thing itself. And they were talking about how like sad that is because like when we do these things just for their own ends, like just because it's worth doing, it is like being a child at play. Like you get so much value out of it. It enriches your life. And like it reminds us too that everything doesn't have to be for a goal beyond the thing itself, you know? And I think that's where we get stuck. We're so focused on goals beyond the actions that you can get totally overwhelmed, stressed, depressed because those goals aren't happening fast enough. You're not getting, the perceived goals you think you're earned, whatever. And it's like, that's not all life is.
Yeah. Yeah. So one thing that I got that I think was really helpful, or like one thing that I got from that book that I wanted to talk about, this really impacted me, was this
Okay.
concept of psychological flexibility. So there were 7 statements in there in the book that she was talking about with psychological flexibility. And these are things that like I don't think are common knowledge. So I thought it would be helpful if we just kind of went over them and discussed them on
Okay.
the channel. So the first one, and this one is like crazy. So the first one is it's okay to feel depressed or anxious sometimes. And
Yeah.
this one just like smacked me upside the face because it appears like in popular culture it's not okay ever to feel depressed or anxious. Like we have this like anxiety crisis in the world where the most people
Yeah.
ever feel anxious, and it's like okay, it's okay to feel anxious or depressed sometimes. And
Yeah.
it like completely dissipates any fear around it, any like problem around it. Like yeah, a lot of people are anxious right now and depressed. Yeah.
Yeah.
But
They are.
you know what? It's okay to feel that way sometimes, and let's do what we can to help. But sometimes people feel anxious or depressed.
Yeah. And if we recognize it both in ourselves and others, we can be more empathetic, compassionate, and helpful, right? And like not be like jerks about it, basically. It's always funny. I always felt like naming things is good sometimes because it helps us like identify it, helps us deal with it. But it can also be like a double-edged sword. Like when you have the more like classifications you have for anxiety, depression, and stuff, it's like I feel like sometimes too, it's like the more people take on it and identify it, and then like they manifest the symptoms because you know what I mean? Does that make sense? Like they
Oh,
think
dude,
about it and yeah.
100% true. I got a
I'm
perfect
not saying that
example of
well,
that.
but
I got a perfect
yeah.
example of that. So, like back in the 1950s, they took a look at all of the Native American populations in America, and there was not a single Native American Indian population where anyone stuttered. Okay.
Hmm.
And this was crazy because like in America, modern society, people have stuttering problems all the time. It like cripples them in their life. Well, it turned out that the Native American Indian populations did not have a word for stutter. And because they did not have a word for stutter, nobody stuttered.
And it wasn't identified, it wasn't pointed out, it wasn't emphasized, and then you get nervous about it, anxious about it, probably gets worse, right? Yeah,
Yeah.
and that's just it. Like, and it's funny because I see all these people, like I see all the time now, like especially like I see it a lot with like ADHD, where like people make like videos about it and stuff, and it's like sometimes I don't think they're helpful because it's like you're leaning so into like these things define me rather than this is the thing I have that I can overcome. You know what I mean? Like, and you can
Yeah.
make it crippling and you can become a victim, and
Yeah. It
yeah.
becomes permanent as opposed to potentially a transient thing.
Yeah. Yeah,
You
exactly.
know?
Like, and it's like
Yeah.
it's very interesting. Yeah. I don't know. It's weird. But
Yeah.
yeah. So
People identify by their issues. So, yeah, so that's one. The second one is I take action on a problem even when I fear I may fail or get it wrong.
that's a good one too.
Dude, what a really like good
Yeah.
mental mindset to have, because like how often do you have problems that you're scared of, that you'll mess it up or that you'll fail or get it wrong, and being okay with like okay, I still take action on it. Like
You know,
that's
my
just going to be a part of it.
my biggest obstacle used to be, and to some extent it still is, but I've gotten over it a lot, was being like worrying about perfectionism, like that it's perfect or that it's like the best it can be. Because one, it's idiotic, 'cause it's never going to be. Like you can always make something better. But like that whole thinking was like would just stall me from getting anything done. And like I'd stress so much about the quality that I would never get produce anything. And it's like I finally like I realized after a while, like, that whole saying like good is better than perfect, it totally is because it's done. And like you can always go back, edit something, tweak it, make it better for the next iteration and next time or whatever. But like sometimes you just have to get something done, and like getting it done is better than having nothing. And like if you
Hmm.
remind yourself that, like the quality, yes, is important, but like, you have to balance that with time and doing things and also your like life, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just reread the book. I think it's called The Art of Being an Imperfectionist. And I mean, it's got a lot of good strategies for dealing with perfectionism because there's also a really significant link between perfectionism and depression.
Oh yeah,
And
dude, it makes
and
sense.
that I mean that could be part of the problem with the large amount of people who are depressed or anxious nowadays because it's hard. Like life nowadays, it seems like you have to be perfect.
Oh, and you're judged on everything. Dude, it's funny, like, and it's funny, like I remember when we got our puppy, I would look at videos, like if you look online at videos for training dogs, it's like these people like expect these dogs to be like, I like these perfect things. And it's like that's like but it's always that bar is always that high, and it's like you don't have time to do all that, or you want them to still be an animal or whatever, whatever it is. Like you want it to work for you. And like it is, it's just funny. Like we do this to ourselves, and I think like I see more people too now come to school like they expect A's on everything. And it's like they give themselves no room for error or learning. Like you're going to be a master at everything the first time you do it, Like it's really interesting. Like, or like I had a kid one time cry because they got a B. I was like, dude, it's a B. It's all right. You did fine. Like that's still good.
Yeah,
Yeah, you need to learn and
yeah,
improve. So what? Like, you know?
yeah. Yeah, I just started reading this New York Times bestseller for a book club that I joined, and I got really like triggered by the first few chapters because the first few chapters it's like, the main character is a super genius. Her child is a super genius. She works with all these super geniuses who just get everything right, and
Oh
the
God,
whole world caters to them. And I was like, this is so freaking unrealistic.
I
Like,
know.
where on earth do you meet these? I've never met anyone like that. And it's just, yeah, it was just crazy.
Dude, you see that all the time in books, and like it gets frustrating because it is. It's like the person, like the one person who saves the world, but they're like good at everything, brilliant,
Totally,
attractive.
totally self-confident. Like,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah,
Never questions themselves and know what to do. It's like, dude, come on, it's not realistic. Yeah,
yeah. So the next one is I don't avoid situations that make me feel nervous. How
that's a
about
good one
that?
too.
Dude, because I
Yeah,
had noticed in my own life, like there were things that I was getting very close to wanting to avoid because they made me nervous.
yeah. I can see that though too, because like when we struggle with like, sometimes it's like and it's hard. I think sometimes it's hard to tell that feeling from others, like is this something like that, for instance, like I just don't really want to do, or is it something that like I don't want to do it not because I don't want to do it, but because it's making me nervous. Like, say getting up and talking in front of people or something or doing that. Right. That took me a long time where like I used to struggle with that so bad where like talking in front of groups, like and a lot of people do, you get nervous and then as soon as you get nervous, like you think about it and then you think like people see it. Like, you have that impression of yourself like shaking like really bad or something. And it's really hard to get past that because, like, and that can ruin your experience of doing it or trying it at all. So I think that's a really good one. Like, just doing it anyway and kind of pushing yourself through it to realize that it's doable, you know?
Yeah, and I found a question that was helpful for me for determining if I actually wanted to do it and if it was just kind of nerves. Was there was uh this thing that I wanted to do, but the thought of doing it made me really anxious because it would put me outside of my comfort zone. So I was like, okay, well, if this fear wasn't here, would I want to do it? And the answer was like, yeah, absolutely. And
Yeah.
so then I was like, okay, well, then let's just do it and we'll just go through it.
The counterfactual is very helpful, isn't it? Like when you ask yourself, imagine the situation without that hurdle, because like it really does tell you, like I mean, if that wasn't there and I wouldn't want to do it, well, then I shouldn't do it because that's just like
Mhm.
obviously I don't want to do it. But like otherwise, then this is the thing blocking my fear, my anxiety, my stress, my nervousness, whatever it is. That's what's getting in the way. Yeah,
Mhm.
it's a good one.
Yeah. So next one is it's okay if I remember something unpleasant.
We really have a warped sense of like what life should be like, don't we? Like, you
It's
know,
supposed to be perfect all the time, and all the bad stuff is out there, and it never comes in ever.
never bothers. I can't have any bad thoughts, no negative, nothing. I gotta be good at everything. I gotta be like, it's like really funny that we set ourselves up so bad for like so many difficulties by making it seem like we have to be this ideal person all the time. And that
Mhm.
like, it's very strange to think that way if you think about it.
Yeah, and like, if we had bad stuff happen to us previously and it comes back up, we're like, oh no, what's happening now?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
I had some crazy dreams this past week, like bordering on nightmares. And I woke up in the morning and I've been reading this list every day just to help like me remember these things. And I was like, well, I guess that's remembering something unpleasant. And so, I'm okay with that. And it was like it was something where I definitely could have started off being like really agitated the whole day because I just like I had a really repulsive nightmare. And then but then I was like, hey, it's okay to remember that.
Oh, dude, like, yeah, when you have really bad dreams and nightmares at night, that can really mess up your whole day for real. Like you start off so bad in the morning, like it's just, yeah, it's terrible. It's
And I'm
funny.
like
I don't
trying to
know.
think like, what does this mean?
Yeah. Oh, dude, it's so weird. It is weird. It is funny.
Hmm.
Like, I wonder how much of it too is like, I've always wondered how much is like I'm sure so much of it is society that we're feeding. Like we get these ideas from. Because like, if you think about like school, you always have to have the best, be in the top percentage. You see like TV in the US especially, like everybody looks perfect. There's like never anything wrong, no blame, nothing wrong with them. Or if there is, it's they're a bad person. It's
Hmm.
like you watch like I mean, even as little kids, you watch those like Disney movies and stuff where like everything ends up happily ever after, all obstacles are overcome by whatever, and like, it's just these unrealistic impressions of life, and then you face the world and it's like this isn't how it is.
Yeah. And also it's always like it seems like it's always a quick fix.
Yeah,
There's
yeah, it
now that I
does.
think of our other
Yeah,
episodes, the quick
right.
fixes, but it seems like there's
Oh,
always a
that's true.
quick
Yeah.
fix. And then when you're struggling through something and it's really hard and it's taking a long time, you're like, what's wrong with me? Why did the Disney prince, why was he able to do that immediately? Why was Siddhartha, why did he get enlightenment immediately? Like all
Like
these
that.
examples, why did all these things happen immediately? And then for me, it's a struggle. What's wrong with me?
Yeah, yeah. And it's funny, it's like I think that's what's cool about this too, is like when I remember when I was really depressed too, like once you start making any headway, like that was my biggest thing, was like I kept thinking like I can't believe I feel like this, like I'll never get anything done, nothing's ever gonna work out. And then I changed my thinking, like I'm just gonna do this one thing today, and it was really simple. And then I did the one thing. I was like, okay, tomorrow I'm gonna try to do that one thing and maybe one other little thing. And then like it just kept, going, and I felt better and better. And like I just kept, and then things got better. And it's like that was all I needed, but I had to give myself the time to get there because you have to process it and you have to work through it. And like, and sometimes you have to build yourself back up and it's hard. But if we expect immediate results, it's never gonna happen. You just
Mhm.
can't. Yeah.
Yeah. So the next one is I can move towards important goals even if I don't feel good about myself.
That's a good one.
Dude, that's a great one. Because, like, how
Yeah.
often do we feel miserable and we're like, no, I'm not going to do it now. I'm going to wait until I feel good and then I'll do it.
I don't feel good. I'm just gonna go lay down and go take a nap for the rest of the
Yeah.
day. Yeah.
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 So many things. We're like, not today. I'm not feeling up to it today. We'll do it another day. And it's like, well, if it's an important goal, you can still just move towards it anyways. Because I mean, let's be realistic. How often do you actually feel really good about yourself to where like you would be in the state
Yeah.
where you're like, let's freaking do that? I guarantee it's not 100% or 75% or maybe even 50% of the time. So like if you're waiting on those moments to actually do anything worthwhile, particularly working on important goals in your life, then you're just going to be waiting forever.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good one because like we do that to ourselves all the time. Like I'll do this thing when this happens, or when my life's like this, or when I feel perfect or whatever, and it's like you're never gonna get there. Like you gotta pull the trigger sometimes because sometimes the best time is just now. Like things aren't ever gonna be like aligned perfectly that it's gonna be that easy. Like it's just, yeah, it's life.
Yeah. They say that in real estate where the best time to buy a house is 10 years ago, second best time is now.
Yeah, right? Because you have hindsight,
Yeah.
you always know it's better.
Yeah, right?
And they were like, $100,000 cheaper. Anyway.
Yeah. So the next one is I don't have to get rid of every scary or upsetting image that comes to mind. And
Someone too.
this one for me like resonated because sometimes I get freaking angry at people, particularly people on their cell phones who are just obnoxious about it. And like for a long time, I was making myself wrong about that. But it's almost like a reflex that comes up. And I don't know, maybe one day I can prevent that reflex. But at the time, it's just, somebody's being obnoxious on their phone, and all of a sudden, I just want to stick their phone down their throat.
Yeah.
But then like that was a thing that happened, and then I would get all on my case about it and be all upset because I had this thought. Whereas with something like this, it's like, okay, I don't have to get rid of all that stuff. Like that can come to mind, and then I can be like, oh, that's a cool thought. How fun would that be if that happened?
And just reminding yourself too, it's like we're just human, like it's like, we can forgive ourselves for things. It's all right. Like, and you're not acting. It'd be different if you're acting on these things. Obviously, you're not. Like, and I get the same way because, like, dude, sometimes I don't know what it is, but like my fuse is so short with how people, especially related to like, I see it so often when people are driving with their like on their phone and not paying attention and stuff, and it just makes me so angry because it's so
I know.
dangerous.
I used
Oh
to like
God.
get the urge to just crash into their
Yeah.
car on the side, just be like, why aren't you paying attention?
Dude, the other day I was driving to work and literally a guy in front of me, I see him. He just starts to swerve into my lane slowly. And I look up and he's like this. And I'm like, dude, come on. Like, it's so dangerous. Like,
Mm-hmm.
how can it be that important? If it's that important, pull over for 5 minutes.
Yeah.
You'll take care of it, and back on
Oh,
the road.
dude, it's like you see these type of accidents all the time too, because you'll see there's like five cars stopped at a stoplight, and then the sixth car is just like smashed into the
Yeah.
back of the other
Yeah,
one.
because they're not
And
even
it's like,
looking.
yeah,
It's
yeah.
insane. And it's like, and
Hmm.
then if you think like, I can't even imagine like a city and stuff because like people are walking and all. Like, I don't know. It makes me so frustrated, dude. Like, I get it.
Yeah, right. So the last one is I would rather achieve my goals than avoid unpleasant thoughts or feelings.
It's a good one.
How about this for what we're up to now, where it's causing us some stress? Like,
I know, right?
rather achieve goals than avoid unpleasant thoughts or feelings.
That's the funniest. That is funny because like that is like, how often do we sacrifice things we want for immediate comfort? And then we're unhappy about it because we don't have the things we want. And like if there's always gonna like it doesn't matter what you do, there's always gonna be discomfort, especially on new things, and especially on worthwhile things. Like everything worthwhile takes effort, takes time, takes pain to some extent, right? You have to get over those things. And usually after time it becomes easier. But like, how often do we just say like, I don't want to feel that way, so forget it, and you give up on these things that like could make your life so much better and like could take care of all the other things in your life that you hate about things, that or bother you or whatever, that frustrate you. It's like, and I think that's such a good one because like I see myself do that all the time where like, I want to do something, but it's like I'll do it, I'll push it off till later because it's too hard now, or whatever. I think that's a really good list because it kind
Mhm.
of addresses all those things where we normally like either from social conditioning or whatever, like we just think incorrectly about things and reminding ourselves that we can change our thinking because it is plastic. There is this flexibility to our brains and to the way we perceive the world. We can change it dramatically if we just do it and remind ourselves.
Yeah. Yeah. What I really liked about this list was like it makes it okay to think and feel whatever you're thinking and feeling and still be able to do the things you want to do in life.
Yeah, and it's true, right? And like, it's funny too. Like if you don't, I think that the what people usually do, I think, which is just try to ignore it or deny that they feel it or push it down, that doesn't address anything either. You're still feeling it. Like I think this is a much better route to like getting control of and being comfortable with yourself rather than like denying it, pushing it down, disassociation, all those things because you don't ever address it. You don't even admit
Hmm.
it half the time, that you're actually feeling it.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. So there's that. And then,
That's a good list.
yeah, that's a good list. And then if you want to find out more about gamifying your life, you should read the
Yeah.
book or watch a TED Talk.
We should, yeah. How do people, we should, I said this really briefly because you mentioned it. How do they gamify? Because we've mentioned it, but we didn't really say what it is.
Okay. Yeah. So like in video games, you have you have certain quests that you need to accomplish. You have bosses that you need to defeat or bad guys that you need to defeat. You have certain things that give you power ups.
Yeah,
And
rewards
so
along the way, right? Yeah.
yeah, so it's kind of identifying these things in your life. So like, you know, noticing things that are good for you. Like for instance, going for a walk in nature or spending time with a loved one. These things that you know that are good for yourself that maybe you just take for granted or maybe you need to get more of, but like recognizing that these things are good for you and then congratulating yourself when you get them. Like noticing, I noticed this is something that I did was I wrote a list of like all of my power ups, and a lot of these were things that I was like taking for granted because I made them part of my routine and now they were this thing that I had to do. And
Yeah.
instead of being like, this is something that's really good for my health and I'm doing it. And so now that I recognize that these are my power ups, when I do it, even though it may not feel great at the moment, I'm like, hey, this is a power up. This is good for me. All right, let's go.
Yeah.
Uh,
It's like I like that too, because it's like you're reminding yourself of the value of it while you're doing it. And of the like kind of the it is like a video game, like the bonuses you're getting from it. Like exercising is a good example where like you're gonna keep getting stronger, maintaining that strength. That's a great power of health. All these factors go with it, reducing stress, walking in nature, just getting time to get outside, enjoying the world you live in, like those kind of things. It gives you that boost in your life and the quality too. I think the powers can be thought of that like increasing your quality of life too in a certain way.
mhm. Yeah,
Yeah.
and then there's like the bad guys or the bosses that you need to fight against. So these are things that you know are kind of like traps for you in life. Like for instance, uh maybe you get really angry at people when they're on their cell phones driving their car and you go down this whole spiral. So like noticing that that is a bad guy and then coming up with strategies to help defeat these bad guys. So like there you can avoid them, uh you can I don't know, there's a whole bunch of different strategies in the book, so I don't know them off the top of my head, but
Yeah.
so figuring out ways to deal with these bad guys. But first it's like naming the dragon. You need to see that this is a bad guy so that instead of automatically going down that rabbit hole, you recognize that this is one of the triggers and okay, now I have these strategies that I already made for how to deal with these things.
Yeah, I think what I really like about the concept of gamifying is it's like it reminds me very much of like the dichotomy of control from Stoicism, where like it's about identifying both things that trigger you and your responses to things and understanding how you're in control of those responses and finding ways to change it to better you or to make your life better or to make your quality of life better. And like, but it does it in a very fun way, I think that a lot of people would relate to. And yeah, if you read the book or see the TED Talk, she goes through examples of like how she used it in her own life that are very helpful and like goes into way more detail, but would definitely recommend it. It's an interesting approach and I think can help change our perspective on how we look at things, to
Yeah.
make it
And
more
then
positive.
yeah, and then there's like the whole concept of quests in your life. So like these are kind of missions that you have to do, and they're prevalent in all types of games. And game designers understand that they need to scale in complexity and difficulty as you gain more experience. And so recognizing this in your own life, uh, sometimes in life, the biggest thing you can do or the hardest thing you can do is maybe taking a shower or looking out the window that day or something. There are times for everyone where these things happen.
Yeah.
And so like recognizing where you are in life and what quests kind of like are that difficulty where it's achievable, but it's just going to push you a little bit.
You know,
And
that's a really good one because that's like I think that's like when I mentioned before when I was really depressed, like that's what helped me get over it was like starting to reframe my goals relative to the level where I was, like recognizing where I was. Because before that, you set these things that are so high, you'll never get it done because you're just not in the mental state, whatever, to do it. And so you're just setting yourself up for failure, which means you're just reinforcing the I can't do anything. Where if you reduce those goals to like beginner or easy, I always think of like the settings, like the hard setting too on the game, like
yeah,
story mode or whatever, then you can actually accomplish it. And then you get the reward. And then you kind of also reward yourself for your own motivation and you can build up again, which I think it's a really good way of thinking about things and reframing them.
yeah. And as you do those small, easy quests, you get better in life and you
Yeah.
gain more confidence because you're like, look at what I'm achieving. And then all of a sudden you can give yourself harder quests and more difficult things.
And I think everybody can relate to this because it's like if you've ever practiced an instrument, a sport, lifted, like exercised, or like, any job, like you get better over time. And what you can do gets more complex, hard, and difficult over time. Like you wouldn't go to the gym and just having never worked out and put like 200 pounds on the thing, you'll never lift it. You have to build slowly up to that. So seeing that as applying in all of your life is a very helpful way to reframe, what you're capable of and just that you can actually get things done that are appropriate to your skill level, kind of.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there you have it. Yeah, it's a really good. I mean, her talks are great, and it's really interesting. I think it is very helpful. So if you're struggling with anything or just a person, definitely would recommend it. Check it out if you found this interesting. This is the Existential Stoic podcast. Check us out wherever you get your podcasts. We're on YouTube as well. Watch our videos, like, share, subscribe. Helps us out a lot. Leave a review if you can, especially on Apple Podcasts. We'll be back later this week with a quick fix. Until then, though, later.
Later, Danny.